Hi, Rick Harsch here. Last video I had this on, so we'll take that off. Should we put something else on? Maybe a good old United States American baseball cap. There we go. Does that say North Dakota? Where the hell's that? Actually, half of my family's from South Dakota. And that's relevant because this is a booktube about my writing that I felt like I should do because I think a couple of years ago, Noah of Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse told me to do something like this, if I remember right. And so I'm going to do it because, I have a couple of books that sell pretty well and are pretty popular, especially this one, The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas. And it's now actually sold by, where the hell is the light? It's a very dark, there's a lighter screen. Okay, this is sold by Zero Gram Press. They bought it from me, and it's fairly well known now. And I think most people consider it my best book, but I think most people don't know my work in general. And so I thought, all right, let's line up the books, get my books out, and go over them and talk about which ones I think are best. And we'll go from best to worst. And by worst, I mean, well, I like it, but we'll talk about that. So the best known is actually, I think, not my best. This is my choice for my best novel. We're now working on getting it into one volume when we are able to afford it and get the work done. But it's The Assassination of Olof Palme, an anthological novel by Rick Harsch and these people. Although neither cover has the accurate people on it. I have to, for the next volume, everything will be accurate in that sense. What's original about this book is that it's not proofread at all. And even while writing it, I didn't make corrections when I saw them. Sometimes I did. But and the reason is we're talking about all things writing in these books, along with the central theme of fascist-style hijinks in Europe that the United States was behind. And there's a lot of information along that type. And, we go basically from Iran-Contra to we go through the Anni di Piombi, in the years of lead in Italy. And there's a lot of funny stuff in here, and it's I think it's probably in some ways the funniest novel, because what not proofreading does is it allows the narrative to accuse muses of breaking into the novel and wreaking havoc, and they do. I'm not going to read from every book, but if I had to read one section from here, I would read about 5 pages which have the muses attacking me, the author. And we also talk about what an author is. One of the authors is a character who's got my same name, because basically some of the things I talk about are so secret and dangerous that the author sends his character to take care of it. There are many things that have never been done before that, as far as I know, in these 2 books, but chiefly the idea of an anthological novel. I wrote 80 to 90% of the novel, and some of the contributions required that I alter them to a degree, but I did get some really fine writing. I had one of the things I did was I had a memo that needed to be written, and I gave that assignment. Just write a memo to one person, but that person wasn't quick enough, so another person said, "I'd like to contribute." And I said, "Okay, write this memo," and I said what the memo had to be. And then a third person said, "I'd like to contribute." And I said, "All right, there's this memo I'm waiting for." Well, the first person, I think, might have turned in the last of the three, but I got 3 memos, 3 copies. So they all went in the book because, we don't know which one was the real memo. And so, the book is written in that spirit. And the funny thing is, while you're reading this book, you're going to read a lot of things that are very, very strange, but almost without exception, and without important exception, I think. Of course, I didn't interview Nancy Reagan, so when she's in a scene, I'm imagining, but I'm imagining precisely what Nancy thought of her husband, and that she was the power behind the throne and all that stuff. Or maybe that's just comic relief. I'm not sure, actually, now that I think of it. But the other things that happen, crazy stuff, the way the Volume 2 opens with a guy who's dropped off with no documents or identification or anything. He's dropped off in Norway, and he has to make it down to near where I live in southern Friuli, which is just near Monfalcone in the Adriatic region of Italy, between Venezia and Trieste. True story. What I did with it was make the most of it, and the muses helped. But that was a lot of fun, and it was written. It's from the first person view of this guy who's being taken from one private army to another, crossing all the borders that he needs to cross to get. I didn't mention the private armies. I didn't want to talk that much about one book, but he needed to get. It was a little toy thing. The conspiracy that this talks about is called Gladio. Look it up. It's actually true. I've read enough European historians to know that the Gladio conspiracy existed, and the United States and Britain started it, and it was supposed to be a way of countering a potential Russian invasion of Western Europe. But it turned into a bunch of countries with secret armies, so secret that in a case like, for instance, Belgium, when the whole thing was blown open in the early 90s, the Belgian prime minister didn't know that it even existed. And so these secret armies, there was one in Norway, and they admit it. They say, yeah, but we didn't do anything. And that's true. They had this army in case the Russians attacked. But in many places, Italy and Germany foremost, they were used to abet right-wing causes in Europe. And they provided the bombing materials in in Italy in many cases during the very violent period called Anni di Piombi, the years of lead. So I think this is my best work. There is something to say about length. That's fairly long. This is the longest book I've written, and it is the most popular and most highly lauded. And so I'll say, yeah, okay, that's probably my second best. My third, and this is what made me think of doing this today, because I was reading this on the porch. I was reading what David Vardaman, he wrote an appreciation of this book. It's called The Appearance of Death to a Hindu Woman. And it went precisely the way I wanted it to. And it was written by me at the writer's workshop. That was why I went there, because I wanted to write this book, and I got 2 years free to do it. And it came out extremely well, and it's different from my other works in many ways, and I think it's as good as it gets. Now, the next book is very hard to choose, and I'm going to make a choice that's very controversial with myself. It's called Arjun and the Good Snake. It's a memoir about alcoholism, marital problems, abusive behavior, many things I don't want anyone to read, so I don't care if you don't buy this book. But it's also got its beautiful parts. It's also very funny, and there's a lot of information about India. If you want a guidebook for India, here you go. A lot about snakes as well. Good Snake is the translation of Nalapamba, which is the Tamil for cobra. The cobra is Nalapamba, the good snake. And now we get to really hard ones to decide on. The Periplus of Spur Tank Road is my latest book. It's about colonialism in India, and I always imagined it as a giant book. Some weird stuff on here. I don't know. Don't order this one. Rick Harsch? I think I signed it. Does that look like Rick Harsch to you? It does to me. I had a really hard time because I thought this is going to be a 500-600 page book, and we need characters, we need to, the development of, events that caused famines and destroyed the economy of India so thoroughly. The best economy in the world when the Westerners, Europeans, started fucking with them and turned it into an economic shithole, which it still is today. It's pretty nightmare stuff. And then I realized, as I started writing it, that my thinking had evolved, and I view it in a different way, and that led me to this condensation. It turned into a tavern discussion novel, and where a man and a monkey talk, and has perhaps a prophetic end, but at least it says what I want to say in the ways I want to say it, which is also true largely of Skulls of Istria, which is one of my more popular books. It's short. It's a tavern confession novel. The main character is talking to a Slavic gentleman who is listening because he's buying him drink. The guy doesn't speak English, and so that is part of what goes on there. Chris Villa wrote a nice bit on it, and an afterword, and a woman named Claire Vassallo, who is a Maltese literary expert, wrote an introduction, and it's one of those books where I was able to just kind of blurt everything out, and it all came out easily and fine and wonderful and all that. The Driftless trilogy is next. Now, this is 3 novels. And the first one was written because I finished The Appearance of Death to a Hindu Woman while I was at the writer's workshop. I finished it earlier than I thought I would, and so I thought, well, I don't know, I got a few more months, let's write a novel. And I wrote a novel, a sort of satirical noir about that takes place in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and that it was perfect for a trilogy. So this is 3 novels called The Driftless Zone, the first one, Billy Verite, the second. He would have been played by Steve Buscemi in the movie, but there was a Hollywood agent trying to sell it, and he died prematurely, age 53. He was also Klaus Kinski's agent. And all 3 of these books were sold to a press in France that went bankrupt just when they were starting to make little copies to sell all over the country, like at train stations and airports and stuff like that. So that's next. But unfortunately, that leaves me with books I love, and they're way down at the bottom. Voices After Evelyn has the best cover, done by Jason Snyder of Staten Island, and this is about babysitters, a famous crime in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and a babysitter is abducted, murdered, both. They never found her, and but it's told in the voices of the people of the town, and it's as much about the people in the town as it is about her. It all revolves around the crime, and another crime that occurs later is connected. But I nearly put this number one because everything came out exactly as I wanted to. All of these voices, and I know it better than I know any book of mine, because I put it up on it's one of these music sites. I think I made an audio book of it. I can't remember the name of the place where it's at, but anyway. So then there's my favorite book to hold and move around because of the Zach Tanner cover. Cranberger with Monkey is one of my favorites because of some really wild stuff that happens at the end, but also because it does something that I don't know if any other book has ever done, in that it's a book of, I call it a comedy of assassinations, and each voice is subject to assassination. So when it's in first person, if that person gets killed, then you have three take his place, and it's in the third person. And if one of them dies, you're in the second person. And if that one dies, you're back in the first person. But it doesn't go in any particular order. So it's a nice literary joke, and I enjoy it a lot. On the other side, you have Adriatica Deserta, which is a fond memory because I wrote it after getting an extreme concussion and breaking some ribs shortly after moving to Slovenia. I wrote it in 3 weeks while I was in bed, and it has the coherence that sometimes writing in a short period of time, every day and all day, it provides. It's not a guarantee, but it worked in this case, and Stephen Moore liked it. I sent this to Stephen Moore, I think. I must have sent it to him because he read it. And he surprised me with a nice note on Adriatica Deserta, an appreciation. And he ended the letter with, on to Cranberger. And then I didn't hear from him again. And I did the stupid thing, which is that I wrote him and said, so what about Cranberger? He said, well, maybe it's not a good reason for liking it, or for not liking it, but I didn't know what was true and what wasn't, and that kind of irritated me. And, I wanted to ask him, well, did you get to the end? I thought he'd love the end. And there's some hijinks at the end that, have to do with Allen Ginsberg. And, anyway. I love it, but and I love to flip it. It's the Balkan Flip is what it's called, but it's 2 novels. And then there's a sentimental favorite, and it's 646. I'm down near the end. There's only 2 more after this. Walk Like a Duck, a season of Little League Baseball in Italy, and this one, my son was about 14, and I had the time and the freedom to write a sort of baseball diary. And what also occurred at that time was well, in this area. You have a lot of fascist memorabilia, strange. What do you call it? Dementia. Anyway, this is a very important region for fascism, and in fact, we're going to do a book on that, on the origins of fascism and the effect on this region, or how this region helped the origins of fascism, or contributed to it. Anyway, there's some monuments that are just insane, and fascism is fascism. Italy's a really strange country. It's one of the most wonderful countries for just going and meeting people on the street, and it's one of the worst countries to get to know the middle class. The fascism is deeply rooted in way too many Italians. So it's a fun book, but I can't put it too high because of the baseball. For me, I also talk about Major League Baseball, any reason for an excursion. It's usually called a discursive thing. Here's Enrico Dandolo, Doge of Venice. Can you see that there? That's getting. There's Fidel Castro in here too as well, in baseball uniform. And so, it covers a lot of ground, but it's mostly about kids playing baseball in Italy. And it was the perfect year. My son's team did very well, and he did very well, and there's all a father's pride in there too, as well, I suppose. I tried to be fair. But now there are only two left, both nonfiction. A circumnavigation through maritime history. It might be higher, but I think there are too many mistakes, not factual mistakes. I had a lot of fun writing it, but I made too many. I thought that I'd gone through it so many times. I thought that it was pretty much perfect, but it could have used one more proofreading. But it's a beautiful book. And it's funny, and there is a lot that you'll learn if you're interested in maritime history. Chapters on navigation. There might be other chapters. The business of maritime trade. San Giovanni e Paolo Piazza, dead doges and a horseman. That's my chapter on Venice. See the baldachin. And and I lead off with India because most maritime histories start with the Mediterranean, which is nonsense. Lastly, speaking of specific, this book is called Wandering Stone: The Streets of Old Isola, and this is about Isola, and I live on what used to be an island. It's now attached to shore, but I live in the old island part, and I decided to write a book just going street by street, naming every street in the old city, because there are only about 50, and saying something about each street, based on their names, and finding out what, or if one's called Ljubljana Street, that's named after the capital. So that I talked more about the characteristics of that particular street, and it's like I don't know, maybe it's not the quality of Jan Morris, but something that she might have written. When the Slovene version came out, somebody compared it to Brodsky's book on Venice, which was quite flattering, and it's made well. It's in an old German font or two that were used. It's easy to read in daylight, but it's not so. Oh, look at that photo. You see the Alps in the background. And it's an amazing thing about this place. You know, you can see Trieste, Monfalcone. You see the cliffs of Duino that Rilke wrote about. He wrote his first two Duino elegies there at Duino, and you can see that. And on a lot of days during the year, you can see Alps that feel like they're on top of you. No photo can ever capture it, but it's a pretty amazing view. It takes up maybe 100 degrees of the horizon, I think, at least, because you're getting from Slovenia through the Dolomites of Italia and maybe even a couple of Austrian Alps to Mount Marmolada, a big one, and in Italy, and so it's it it seems like right on top of the water. It's a gorgeous view. There are 270 some photos in here. I don't know how good they are. They're in black and white. I like them, but a photographic expert said there are too many dark spaces in there. And here I turn to one where, wait, is that? Yeah, see, right there. It doesn't have to be that dark. So probably he's right. The pictures could have been better. But, what the hell? The first version of this book had photos by me taken on my telephone. So I think this is clearly better. Love the cover. It's from a famous Slovene, and that was his depiction from the 15th century of Isola. So that's it. And, so this is my body of work. Other books I've decided not to put into a computer and publish. But, it's not just one or two books. Just so you know, what am I thinking? I'm thinking why is nobody buying this one? This one? This one? These are the undersold, I would say. The undersold. This and this and this and this and this. Now, if nobody buys this or not many people buy this, I understand. What do you care about the old streets of Old Isola? This, word gets around. Too many typos and shit, But, this and this, these really need more attention. The Driftless trilogy has been getting more lately. Skulls of Istria has done fairly well over time. These are two that should be selling, and this one in particular, I think, should be known. So, this is not to say I'm no one-book author. It's to say I want to interest people in the body of my work, but as the chief editor of the press, it's kind of hard to point at my books. So I did a special. This is the Rick Harsch special. Watch for this volume. It'll come out in... this guy, by the way, is Giuseppe Pinelli. Dario Fo based his play, the Accidental Death of an Anarchist. This was The Anarchist, completely innocent of a bombing that used explosives that came from NATO through a United States base. And this is proven. It's a historical fact. It went off in Milan in '69, and he was interrogated by the police until he was dead. He went out the window. It was in December. There's a famous song, The Ballad of Giuseppe Pinelli, that says, in December, what does it say? I'm thinking of the Italian and the English at the same time, but it makes a joke about, it's ironic. It talks about how, it's hot, really hot in Milano in December, so there's a window open in the police station. And that's why he was able to fall. Leftists in Italy would really understand about blacks in the United States. Let me just say that. So that's the story. Anything you want to know about these books, email me. Read about them. Some of them have things written about them. Take care. Thanks for your patience. I'm not going to force anyone to look at this. I'm not going to share it. Nothing. You can find it on your own.